In this video, I'll be talking about my journey to MGTOW and how you can find success in your own life by following the same path. Even though 2022 is almost over, you can still change your life. A lot of people might not know what this is, but don't worry. I'll explain it all for you. MGTOW is an acronym that stands for Men Going Their Own Way, and it's a movement that's been growing in popularity lately as more and more men are starting to see the benefits of living a life free from women. I recommend you to continue watching to know why I went this way and why you should too. It's safe to assume that if you've watched this far, you're already familiar with and sympathetic to the MGTOW worldview. MGTOWs, contrary to common belief, are not involuntary celibates who choose to live alone. On the contrary, because they've learned from their own and other men's mistakes that pursuing romantic relationships is not worthwhile, many people today, or NPCs to be more precise, want to be accepted and fit in with these people. Still, they valued loyalty, honesty, and other human virtues in the past. They blindly comply with orders and replicate the actions of those before them. All the lies that society tells them, they accept eagerly, since allegedly, it's for their excellence. We can see this in the prevalence of marriage and even dating. There's a good likelihood that during a family gathering, someone will ask you where your girlfriend is, and you'll roll your eyes at the Matrix-like query. I remember telling a family member I was single the first time. She looked at me for a long moment, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, finally she blurted out, "But you're so successful. How could you be single?" I just shrugged and said it wasn't something I've given much thought to. In truth, I was surprised by her reaction. After all, I was in my late 20s, I had a good job, owned my own home. Indeed, these were things that mattered most. Over the years, I realized that people are often shocked to hear that I'm single because they assume that being unmarried is a sign of failure. In their minds, single means lonely, isolated, and needy. But that's not necessarily the case. Just because someone is single doesn't mean they're unhappy or alone. On the contrary, some of the most content and fulfilled people I know are single. And who knows, one day I'll find someone special to share my life with. But until then, I'm perfectly happy flying solo. You've already got an edge if they're interested in learning more about your decision-making process. Everything you need to know is in this video. These are the only triggers, so be on the lookout. To hush them, you will lay them out. You will tell them to bother someone else if you could. But the fact is that individuals want to impose their views on others and have you agree with them. That's how life is. So you may politely ask them to stop or use an example to help them see things from your perspective. It can be difficult to get others to see things from your perspective, especially when you disagree on a fundamental level. However, there are some strategies you can use to politely ask others to consider your point of view. For example, you may say something like, "I understand that you feel passionate about this issue. Would you be willing to share an example of how this has affected you personally?" By framing your request in this way, you are more likely to get the other person to open up and engage in a meaningful conversation. Additionally, you may want to avoid using "I" statements as they come across as confrontational. Instead, focus on "you" statements to show that you are interested in understanding the other person's perspective. With some patience and understanding, you should be able to find common ground with others, even if you don't always see eye to eye. If ever they don't get it, no more trying to prove yourself. Save your energy. As a MGTOW, I object to being told what to think, and I support individual liberty, provided it does not infringe on the rights of others. It is that straightforward, but contemporary women don't seem to get that it's their issue, not ours. If you're a MGTOW, you will understand what I'm about to say. This will resonate with you if you have any common sense, which isn't all that common, to be honest. Anyone in a long-term relationship knows it takes effort to keep the spark alive. However, sometimes one partner can become spoiled, demanding all their partner's attention and becoming unreasonable when they don't get their way. This can become incredibly tiresome for men, who are often expected to be the strong, silent type. Dealing with a spoiled partner can quickly become an exhausting exercise in patience. It is essential to communicate openly with your partner and set boundaries to avoid being taken advantage of. Otherwise, you may run out of energy to deal with your partner's demands. After dealing with a couple of spoiled women, I reverted to the MGTOW mentality, and the results were immediate. For instance, I'm not bothered with explaining my work. and I have plenty of time for introspection, which puts me in monk mode and allows me to satisfy the masculine imperative and finally create. In today's society, it may seem that women have no trouble finding fulfilling careers as soldiers, firefighters, or police officers. In order to fight the repressive societal structures that hold women as enslaved people in today's society, women are encouraged to earn more degrees in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM for short. Some people today may think it's okay for men to show emotion and even cry in certain situations. This may seem incredible in theory, but it has catastrophic consequences. Guys, please wait. I'm not advocating emotionless, robotic behavior, but having a firm grasp on who you are and how to use it to your advantage is essential. I want to convey that emotionally illiterate men are easier to control, less likely to think for themselves, and pose a more significant threat to society. Consider the case of the emotionally stunted man who cannot express his feelings or deal with conflict healthily. He is likelier to lash out at violence or act in destructive ways. In contrast, a man who is emotionally intelligent and can express his feelings is more likely to be able to resolve conflict peacefully and constructively. He is also more likely to be a positive societal force, working towards the greater good. Therefore, it is clear that emotional intelligence is an essential quality for all men and one that we should strive to cultivate in our boys and young men. On the other hand, women tend to think they should be allowed to choose careers and educational paths that they aren't passionate about. As a result, American women over 40 make up the most dismal demographic in the country, even though the government has higher standards of living, pay more taxes, and has more independent women. Our world has been turned upside down, and due to this seemingly hopeless situation, there is widespread confusion. Men tend to side with MGTOW because, in all honesty, women have a habit of mistreating their male counterparts. In each of the 3 relationships I've had, I had a more long-term focus than my partner had. To all appearances, despite my elegant manner, I was hired on as a temporary object therapist or psychologist. Even if relationships could survive the current climate, everyone assumes they won't. Trust and daddy issues are also common concerns. It's unfortunate but true that problems within families are common. People get bored quickly and move on to the next potential partner. These days, many people, especially urban females, tend to think that sleep is fantastic and that having kids is terrible. So they hitch rides with plenty of individuals but form no meaningful relationships with any of them. The possibility that some women will end up with me gives me hope that they can find a better partner in the future. Sometime later, perhaps months or years later, these same women randomly approached me again, but this time I politely declined since I now respected myself. Trust me when I say this sensation is much better than being inside a woman. It's a mixed bag because I don't enjoy being treated like a proving ground exercise or a sideshow attraction. When people I've trusted lie to me, I feel betrayed. They disregarded my emotional well-being and state of mind because they didn't believe me when I said I was planning ahead. I don't enjoy the pressures of modern culture, and I'm too traditional for the times. The 20s are a time for hedonism and partying, not settling down with a steady girlfriend. I don't mean to be over-sentimental, but it makes me sad to think about how far we've come in the last few decades when I consider how much my grandparents loved each other. The standard operating procedure for the modern dating market is depressing and repulsive to say the least. Women in particular are urged to have a lot of meaningless flings in their 20s to up their body count to extreme levels, then tie the knot once they've established their financial independence in their 30s. Getting married and having children in your 20s is a good idea, especially if you're a man or before your attractiveness fades as a woman. Despite the challenges, being married does not mean you have to give up on your dreams of being a CEO, an astronaut, a famous actor, or whatever else your heart desires. Because of the lack of trust and loyalty, I can see why so many individuals are drawn to the concept of MGTOW. Dating is still more expensive for men than for women since modern movements have yet to take into account the cultural assumption that males provide for women. While men are required to work or look down on for their type of employment they have, women are praised and glorified for working. In the past, it was generally accepted that men and women had different roles in relationships. Men were expected to be loyal and provide for their families, while women were expected to be supportive and care for the home. However, times have changed and modern relationships are far more egalitarian. Women now expect their partners to be emotionally supportive and share in domestic duties, while men are just as likely to desire a loyal and loving partner. While some may see this change as a step forward, others argue that it has led to higher expectations and fewer benefits for both sexes. In many ways, it seems that women have become more demanding without offering anything in return. As a result, some men feel that they are shouldering all of the responsibility in modern relationships. Whether this is a positive or negative development is up for debate. However, one thing is certain: modern relationships are far different than they used to be. In today's world, it's not uncommon to find women who want their men to be perfect. They expect them to be polite, considerate, and fair at all times, and they often place unreasonable demands on them in terms of these things. This can be frustrating for us men who may feel like we can never do anything right in our partner's eyes. It's important to remember that no one is perfect and that everyone makes mistakes occasionally. If there's no point, more and more men are opting to go their separate ways. When a contract goes wrong, the benefits are no longer worthwhile. I'm relieved to be away from all that depravity and idiocy for the time being. I hope you as a male can take something valuable away from this video. Success upon success. As always, the floor is yours. Tell me what you think. Why did you decide to adopt this philosophy? I'm curious about your perspective on the world as it stands now. Being a Sigma male can sometimes be challenging. You want to be successful with women, but don't want to appear too aggressive. You want to be assertive in your career, but not too bossy. In this next video, I will give you 17 tips to help you become a better Sigma male. By following these tips, you'll be able to walk the fine line between being too passive and being too aggressive, and ultimately becoming more successful with the women and career of your dreams.